I woke up inside a stranger's life with a wedding ring on my finger and 37 missed calls from someone saved as Noah Bennett, husband. For the first 10 seconds, I thought I had passed out in a luxury hotel after some terrible joke, because the room around me looked nothing like my apartment back in Chicago. The ceiling was too high, the bed too wide, the curtains too expensive, and the morning light coming through the windows revealed a mansion lawn stretching farther than a football field. Then I saw my reflection in the dark glass of the wardrobe. The face staring back was not mine. It was sharper, older, almost unfairly handsome, with the kind of cold alpha presence I had only read about in the novel I fell asleep reading the night before. Ryan Carter. The name hit me with a wave of memories that were not mine. Rich heir, alpha husband, public success, private disaster. I grabbed the phone from the nightstand with hands that did not feel like they belonged to me, and the screen lit up with messages from Noah. Please come upstairs. I do not feel right. Ryan, please answer. I think something is wrong. The last message was from 3 days ago. A cold thread of panic pulled tight in my chest. Before I could make sense of it, a soft knock came from the bedroom door, and a housekeeper stepped in with a silver tray like this was a normal morning in a nightmare. She froze when she saw me sitting upright, phone in hand. Mr. Carter, she said carefully, your breakfast is ready downstairs. Your Omega is still in the East Room. He has been sick for 3 days. Sick. The word should have been simple. Flu, fever, maybe food poisoning. Something ordinary. Something fixable. I swung my legs out of bed, nearly tripping over the edge of a rug that probably cost more than my old car, and asked why no doctor had been called. The housekeeper stared at me like I had spoken a language she did not understand. She said the old me had ordered everyone not to interfere when Noah was being dramatic. The old me. The phrase landed like a stone. I did not wait for more. I ran through a hallway lined with framed wedding portraits, and in every one, Ryan Carter stood beside Noah Bennett with a face like he was signing a business contract instead of marrying a person. Noah looked young, pale, and heartbreakingly quiet. His smile so careful it barely existed. At the very end of the hall, behind a half-closed door, the air was warm and stale. The curtains were drawn. A glass of water lay empty on the nightstand. Cold medicine sat scattered beside it, untouched or useless. I could not tell. Noah was curled beneath a blanket, white skin flushed with fever, dark blonde hair damp against his forehead, his breathing thin and uneven. He looked smaller than the man in the wedding photo, as if 3 days in that room had folded him inward. Every alpha instinct in this borrowed body went silent with shock, then roared with one clear command. Help him. I stepped closer, terrified of frightening him, and whispered his name. Noah's eyes fluttered open. For 1 second, relief crossed his face. Then fear replaced it, automatic and exhausted. I'm sorry, he murmured, voice barely there. I tried not to bother you. Something inside me cracked so cleanly I almost heard it. This was not my marriage, not my body, not my mistake, and yet I was standing in the wreckage of all three. I turned toward the housekeeper in the doorway and told her to call the doctor immediately. She went pale. Sir, she whispered, that was not the flu. The housekeeper's words emptied the room of every simple explanation I had been clinging to. Not the flu. For a moment, I could only stand there beside Noah's bed, staring at the useless cold medicine on the nightstand, the dry glass, the drawn curtains, and the man who had spent 3 days apologizing for needing help. My mind was still trying to translate the rules of this world, but this body understood before I did. The tightness in my chest, the restless panic under my skin, the instinctive need to lower my voice and make the room safer. All of it belonged to an alpha whose biology recognized an omega in distress, even if the person wearing his face had no idea what to do. I told the housekeeper to open the windows halfway, bring water, clean towels, and call the family doctor now. Not after breakfast, not after checking with anyone, now. My voice came out colder than I meant it to, and she moved so fast the tray in her hands rattled. Noah flinched at the sound. That small movement hit me harder than any accusation could have. I crouched beside the bed, keeping both hands visible, and told him I was not angry. His fever-bright eyes searched my face like he was looking for the trick hidden behind the kindness. He whispered that he could move to the guest room if the east room smelled wrong. I did not know what answer would hurt least, so I said the truth. You are not moving anywhere until a doctor says you are safe. His lashes trembled, and for one fragile second, he looked almost confused instead of afraid. The doctor arrived 20 minutes later, an older beta named Dr. Samuel Hayes, wearing a gray coat and the expression of a man who had already guessed too much from the emergency call. He examined Noah with calm efficiency, asked him gentle questions, checked his temperature, hydration, pulse, and the medication bottles scattered across the table. Then he looked at me, and whatever respect Ryan Carter's name usually commanded did not enter that room with him. Mr. Carter, he said quietly, your husband is exhausted, dehydrated, and physically overwhelmed from an unmanaged heat cycle. This is not a seasonal illness. This is not drama. This is neglect. The word struck like a gavel. Neglect. I wanted to say I had not known, that I had only been in this body for less than an hour, that the real Ryan Carter was somewhere unreachable and I was a stranger trapped in the consequences. But Noah was lying 3 feet away, pale and silent, and excuses would only make me sound more like the man he feared. Dr. Hayes gave instructions with clinical precision. Fluids, rest, stabilizing medication, cool cloths if the fever rose, no crowding, no pressure, no unnecessary touching, calm environment, consent before every step. He said Noah needed to feel safe more than he needed anyone to perform concern for an audience. I nodded and memorized every word like my life depended on it, because maybe Noah's trust did. When the doctor asked why he had not been called sooner, the room went still. Noah's fingers tightened around the blanket. The housekeeper lowered her eyes. My phone, still on the nightstand, lit up again with old missed alerts from 3 days ago, each one a little confession. I picked it up and saw the final message Ryan had sent before everything went silent. Stop making this my problem. For a second, the room blurred. I turned the screen face down, ashamed of a cruelty I had not written but now had to answer for. Dr. Hayes packed his bag and warned me that recovery would not be instant. The body might stabilize in a day, but trust took much longer. After he left, I changed the water myself, opened the curtains just enough to let in soft morning light, and sat in a chair several feet from the bed where Noah could see me without feeling cornered. He watched me through half-closed eyes, wary and exhausted. I told him he did not have to talk. He did not have to forgive me. He only had to rest. Noah looked at the glass of water in my hand as if it were something rare. When he finally accepted it, his fingers shook so badly I had to steady the cup without touching him. That was the first thing I learned in Ryan Carter's mansion. Sometimes the beginning of redemption was not a grand apology, but making sure the person you hurt finally had enough water. By noon, Noah's fever had eased enough for his breathing to settle into a steadier rhythm, but the mansion around us felt colder than before. Maybe it was because the emergency had quieted, leaving space for the truth to crawl in. I sat in the chair by the window, Dr. Hayes' written instructions on my lap, watching Noah sleep while the phone in my hand kept offering pieces of a life I wished I could deny. Calendar reminders, business meetings, family dinners, messages from lawyers. Nothing about Noah except formal obligations, medical invoices, and one recurring note that made my stomach twist. Separate residence expectations. I opened the photo gallery, hoping for some harmless clue, and found years of images arranged like evidence. Ryan Carter shaking hands with executives. Ryan Carter standing beside his parents at charity events. Ryan Carter alone in front of expensive cars, private clubs, and glass office towers. Then the wedding album appeared. My thumb hovered over it for several seconds before I tapped. The first photo showed Noah in a cream suit beneath a white floral arch, dark blonde hair neatly styled, blue eyes lowered, hands folded so tightly his knuckles looked pale. Beside him, Ryan wore a black suit and the expression of a man waiting for a contract to be finalized. There was no warmth in his posture, no pride, no tenderness. As I stared at the picture, something snapped open behind my eyes. The room tilted. Memories that were not mine poured in, sharp and cold. A wedding reception where Noah stood alone beside a cake no one had cut. A dinner table set for two while Ryan walked past it, phone to his ear, saying he had already eaten downtown. Noah's birthday flowers delivered by an assistant with the wrong card. A closed bedroom door. A signed agreement that listed marriage terms in language drier than a bank loan. Then came the worst memory, clear as if it had happened yesterday. Noah calling from the East Room, voice small and strained, asking Ryan to come upstairs because something felt wrong. Ryan standing in his office, irritated by the interruption, not worried, not even curious. He told Noah to handle it himself and turned the phone off. I lurched from the chair so fast it scraped against the floor. Noah stirred, and I froze, swallowing back the nausea rising in my throat. This body had done that. These hands had held the phone. This voice had dismissed him. I wanted to separate myself from the man in those memories, but the mirror across the room refused to let me. To Noah, there was no difference between the Ryan who ignored him and the Ryan now folding clean towels beside his bed with shaking hands. Same face, same scent, same wedding ring. The only thing that had changed was the person trapped behind the eyes, and that was not proof Noah could trust. It was only another impossible thing he had not asked for. When he woke again near mid-afternoon, the first thing he did was apologize for sleeping too long. I had to grip the towel in my hand to keep my voice calm. I told him rest was not a mistake. He blinked at me, confused by the sentence, as if kindness had arrived speaking a foreign language. I asked whether he wanted the room brighter or darker. He whispered that whatever I preferred was fine. I said I was asking what he preferred. His lips parted, but no answer came. That silence told me more about the marriage than any file could. A few minutes later, the housekeeper returned with a bowl of soup on a silver tray. She set it near me and said Mrs. Carter had called 3 times, wanting to know whether I still intended to attend the foundation luncheon. I looked at Noah, at the careful way he had turned his face toward the wall to become less present, and something inside me hardened with a clean, useful anger. I told her to cancel everything. All meetings, all luncheons, all calls except the doctor. Then I took off Ryan Carter's expensive watch and placed it face down on the table. Noah watched the movement like it was a trick. I understood then that my first enemy was not the Carter family, the staff, or the rules of this world. It was the history written into every corner of this house. And if I wanted Noah Bennett to survive being loved by a man with Ryan Carter's face, I would have to start by tearing that history apart one quiet, careful choice at a time. The first real change I made in that house was not dramatic enough for anyone outside it to notice. I did not smash a portrait, fire the whole staff, or announce some grand transformation from the staircase. I simply moved a chair. The chair beside Noah's bed had been positioned near the headboard, close enough to make him feel watched, so I carried it across the room and set it near the window where he could see me without feeling trapped. Then I asked if that distance was all right. Noah stared at me for several seconds before giving the smallest nod. It was the kind of nod a person gave when they did not believe their answer mattered, and that made the simple act of sitting down feel heavier than any apology I could have spoken. Dr. Hayes had left a schedule on the bedside table, so I followed it exactly. Water every 15 minutes if Noah could manage it. Stabilizing medication with food. Cool cloth only if his temperature rose again. No raised voices. No strong scents. No crowding the room. Consent before every step. I repeated the instructions in my head like a prayer while the mansion continued to move around us with quiet, expensive indifference. Downstairs, someone vacuumed a hallway. Somewhere outside, a gardener trimmed hedges along the driveway. Life continued as if Noah had not nearly disappeared inside a locked room while everyone followed orders from a careless alpha. When the soup arrived, I tasted a spoonful first to make sure it was not too hot, then placed the bowl on the rolling tray and asked if he wanted to try a little. Noah looked at the spoon, then at me, suspicion and exhaustion flickering across his pale face. He whispered that he could feed himself. I said of course and slid the tray closer, careful not to touch his hand. He managed 3 spoonfuls before his fingers started shaking. The old Ryan would have sighed. I knew that because the memory rose in me, ugly and automatic. a flash of irritation at weakness that was never mine and now made me sick. I pushed it down and asked if he wanted help or a break. Noah chose a break, so we took one. No complaint, no pressure, just silence, warm soup, and morning light softening against the curtains. After a while, he asked why I was still there. The question was so quiet I almost missed it. I told him because he was sick and should not have to be alone. His eyes lowered immediately, like the answer hurt. He said I usually hated being near him during this kind of cycle. I gripped the edge of the chair until my knuckles went white, not from anger at him, but from the impossible weight of what Ryan Carter had taught him to expect. I wanted to say that man was gone. I wanted to explain that I was not the same person who had ignored his calls, that I had woken up in this life horrified by what I found. But Noah did not need impossible confessions from the face that scared him. He needed proof that lasted longer than a morning. So I said I was sorry for leaving him alone, and that it would not happen again. He did not answer. He turned his face toward the window, and I let him. Trust, I was beginning to understand, could not be chased. It had to be given a safe place to return to. That afternoon, I unlocked the connecting door between the east room and the main hallway and left it open. Then I called Dr. Hayes again, wrote down every instruction twice, and asked the housekeeper to remove every bottle of cold medicine from Noah's room. By evening, Noah's fever had lowered another degree, and he had finished half the soup on his own. It was not forgiveness. It was not even peace. But when he fell asleep, his hand rested beside the full glass of water instead of curled tightly under the blanket. And for the first time since I had opened that door, the room no longer felt like a place where someone had been abandoned. The next morning, I learned that a mansion could look beautiful and still be built like a cage. Noah's fever had broken during the night, leaving him exhausted but clearer, and while he slept, I walked through the house with fresh eyes. The Carter estate had 12 bedrooms, 3 sitting rooms, a glass sunroom, a library, an indoor pool no one used, and a kitchen larger than my old apartment. Yet Noah had been living almost entirely in the east room, as if the rest of the house belonged to everyone except the person who wore my ring. His slippers were tucked beside one bed. His books were stacked in one narrow corner. His coat hung alone on a hook near the side staircase, not in the main closet with mine. The message was everywhere once I knew how to read it. Stay small, stay separate, stay grateful. I found the household binder in the manager's office after breakfast, a thick black folder labeled Carter Residence Standards. The rules inside were written in polite language that made them worse. Omega access to formal dining room by invitation. East wing preferred for Omega rest periods. Main office restricted. Alpha suite private. Garden use with notice. Visitors subject to Carter family approval. I read each line twice, feeling a colder anger build behind my ribs. This house had not neglected Noah by accident. It had been trained to treat him like a guest who had overstayed his welcome. Mrs. Vale, the senior housekeeper, stood in the doorway with her hands folded, watching me remove page after page from the binder. She asked whether I wanted the household to return to the previous arrangement after Mr. Bennett recovered. Mr. Bennett, not Noah, not my husband. I looked up and told her his name in this house was Mr. Carter Bennett, unless he preferred something else. Her expression barely changed, but the silence around us did. I told her every locked interior door was to be opened, every separate restriction removed, and every staff member informed that Noah could use any room, garden, vehicle, or service in the estate without asking permission from me first. She hesitated at that, just half a second too long. I added that anyone who had a problem with respecting my husband could leave with severance by the end of the day. By noon, the mansion was moving differently. Keys disappeared from locks. The east room curtains were replaced with lighter ones because Noah said the old fabric made the room feel heavy. A tray of fresh fruit, toast, and herbal tea was brought up without silver covers or formal stiffness. I asked the gardener to open the greenhouse path and place a bench there because the doctor said fresh air would help once Noah was strong enough. Every change felt small to me. To Noah, each one landed like a question he was afraid to answer. When I told him the library was his to use, he asked if there was a list of approved shelves. When I said he could choose dinner, he asked what I wanted first. When I mentioned the garden, his eyes lit for half a breath before caution covered them again. He said he had not gone there since spring because the old me disliked dirt tracked through the hall. I almost apologized again, but apology was beginning to feel too easy for a wound this deep. Instead, I ordered washable mats for every entrance and asked whether he liked roses or herbs. He looked at me as if I had offered him the moon in a cup. Herbs, he said finally, barely above a whisper. Basil, rosemary, and mint. So that afternoon, while Noah rested near the open window, I sat at the desk across the room and searched how to build an accessible raised garden bed, how to support recovery after prolonged stress, how to cook chicken soup that did not taste like hospital food, and how to be patient with someone who had every reason not to believe me. Near sunset, Mrs. Vale returned with a message. My mother, Evelyn Carter, had heard I canceled the luncheon and wanted to know why the household was being disrupted over an Omega's mood. Noah was awake when she said it. I saw his face close down, fast and practiced. That was when I understood the next locked door was not made of wood. It was the Carter family itself, and it was already on its way. By early evening, the Carter family arrived in 3 black cars that stopped in front of the mansion like a verdict. I watched from the top of the staircase as Evelyn Carter stepped into the foyer, elegant in a cream coat, silver hair pinned perfectly, her expression calm in the way powerful people looked calm when they expected the world to rearrange itself around them. Behind her came my father in this life, Richard Carter, broad-shouldered and silent, and my younger brother, Mason, whose amused eyes made it clear he had already decided this situation was beneath him. The staff lined the walls without being asked. That alone told me how often this family had entered the house and taken command. Noah was still upstairs in the East Room, sitting near the open window with a blanket over his lap and a cup of tea cooling beside him. Dr. Hayes had said he needed rest, quiet, and no stress. The Carter family brought stress the way storm clouds brought rain. Evelyn did not greet me like a mother worried about her son. She looked past me toward the stairs and asked where the Omega was. Not Noah. Not my husband. The Omega. I came down slowly, keeping my voice even, and told her Noah was recovering and would not be receiving visitors. Mason laughed under his breath. Richard asked whether I had lost my sense of priorities over a minor domestic episode. Evelyn removed her gloves finger by finger, as if she had all evening to correct me, and said the household staff reported alarming changes, canceled obligations, and inappropriate indulgence. She said Noah had always been delicate, and delicate Omegas needed structure before they confused kindness with authority. The words were polished, but their meaning was ugly. I thought of the East Room, the empty glass, the locked doors, the rule binder, and Noah asking whether he was allowed to use the library shelves. For one dangerous second, Ryan Carter's inherited instincts wanted to answer with cold arrogance because that was the language this family understood. I chose something steadier instead. I told them every change in this house would remain. Evelyn's eyes sharpened. She said Noah would come with them to the main Carter residence for observation until I became reasonable again. From the landing above, there was the faintest sound, a floorboard settling under careful weight. I looked up and saw Noah standing near the hallway shadow, one hand against the wall, pale but awake, fear written across his face before he could hide it. He had heard enough. Evelyn saw him too and smiled with thin satisfaction, telling him to get dressed because this discussion did not require a scene. Noah lowered his eyes automatically. That single movement decided everything for me. I stepped between the staircase and my family. No, I said. The word was quiet, but the foyer changed around it. Mason stopped smiling. Richard's jaw tightened. Evelyn stared at me as if I had broken a family heirloom in front of her. I said Noah was not leaving this house unless he chose to, and no one would speak to him as if his recovery were an inconvenience. Evelyn reminded me that the marriage contract existed because of Carter interests. I told her the contract did not outrank his safety, his consent, or his dignity. My voice did not rise, but every staff member heard it. Noah Bennett Carter is my husband, not a family asset, not a household problem, and not someone you get to manage because I failed to protect him before. The admission burned, but it was necessary. I turned slightly, not enough to take my eyes off them, but enough for Noah to know I was speaking where he could hear me. I told him he did not have to come downstairs. He did not have to answer them. He did not have to prove he deserved peace. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Noah's fingers tightened around the stair rail, and he stayed where he was instead of retreating. It was a small act, almost invisible. To me, it felt like the first crack in a wall that had stood for years. Evelyn put her gloves back on with slow precision and said I would regret humiliating the family. I opened the front door myself and told them good night. After they left, the mansion remained silent, stunned by the absence of their authority. I looked up at Noah. He was still pale, still exhausted, still wary, but for the first time, he was looking directly at me, as if trying to decide whether the man wearing Ryan Carter's face had finally done one thing the old Ryan never would have done. He had chosen him in front of everyone. For the first time, Ryan stood as a shield instead of a storm. Will this new Ryan be enough to heal Noah's deep scars? Or will the Carter family tear them apart? If you're loving this journey of redemption, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Let's see how their story unfolds. In the days after the Carter family left, the mansion became quieter, but not softer all at once. Noah recovered slowly, the way winter loosens its grip one thin patch of sunlight at a time. Dr. Hayes visited every other morning, adjusted the stabilizing medication, checked Noah's hydration, and reminded me that the body often healed faster than the heart. I did not need reminding. Noah proved it in 100 small ways. He thanked the nurse for changing the water pitcher as if fresh water were a privilege. He asked permission before walking to the window. He folded the blanket after resting, even when his hands still trembled. Every habit carried the shape of old fear, so I made rules for myself instead of rules for him. I knocked before entering any room he occupied. I kept my voice low even when speaking to staff. I wore lighter scent blockers after Dr. Hayes explained that an alpha presence, even a careful one, could feel overwhelming during recovery. I stopped standing too close. I stopped assuming silence meant yes. The first time Noah tested me, he did it so quietly I almost missed it. He left his morning medication untouched on the tray and watched from behind his book as I noticed. The old Ryan, according to every memory I had inherited, would have scolded him for being difficult. I simply asked if the medicine made him nauseous or if he wanted Dr. Hayes to review the dose. Noah blinked, as if he had prepared for a storm and gotten clear weather instead. He admitted it tasted bitter. By afternoon, I had called the doctor, ordered the approved alternative, and added honey lemon tea to the tray. The second test came at breakfast. I had the staff set 2 places in the sunroom because Noah said bright rooms made breathing easier. He came downstairs slowly, one hand on the rail, dressed in a soft blue sweater instead of the formal clothes the old household rules had required. Halfway through the meal, he pushed the eggs away and whispered that he was not hungry. I felt 3 staff members tense behind us. I ignored them and asked if toast, fruit, or soup sounded better. His eyes flicked to my face, searching for irritation. There was none. He chose toast. I buttered my own and let him fix his however he wanted. The third test was the garden. He stood at the open back door for nearly 5 minutes, staring at the stone path that led toward the greenhouse. I asked if he wanted company or privacy. He said privacy so softly that it sounded like an apology. I handed him a phone with my number, Dr. Hayes' number, and the house line saved on the front screen, then stayed inside. Through the window, I watched only long enough to make sure he did not stumble. After that, I turned away because trust was not trust if it needed an audience. When Noah returned 20 minutes later, his cheeks were pink from the cold and his hands smelled faintly of rosemary. He placed a small green sprig on the breakfast table without looking at me. I did not ask what it meant. I put it in a glass of water beside my plate and treated it like a gift. That evening, I moved my work from the main office to the small sitting room across from the east wing, not to monitor him, but so he would not have to cross the entire mansion if he needed something. Noah noticed. Of course, he noticed everything. He stood in the doorway after dinner, one hand wrapped around his teacup, and asked if I was doing all this because I felt guilty. I answered honestly, yes, but not only because of guilt. Because you deserved it before I ever understood that. His fingers tightened around the cup. He looked away, but he did not leave. For the first time, he sat in the chair across from mine, close enough for conversation, far enough to feel safe. We did not talk much. The rain tapped against the windows. The mansion lights glowed warm instead of cold. Noah opened his book, and I opened Dr. Hayes' care notes, and for nearly an hour, the house held two people in the same room without fear deciding where either of them belonged. The night Noah finally asked the question. Rain was moving softly down the sunroom glass, turning the garden lights into blurred gold. He had been stronger that day, strong enough to walk to the greenhouse without stopping, strong enough to sit at the kitchen island while I burned the first batch of chicken soup and pretended not to see him hide a tiny smile behind his teacup. It should have felt like progress, and it did, but progress in our house was never simple. It lived beside memory. It sat between us at dinner. It followed Noah's eyes whenever my voice got too quiet or my footsteps entered a hallway too quickly. After dinner, we returned to the small sitting room near the east wing. I worked through emails with half my attention and ignored every message from Evelyn Carter. Noah sat across from me with a blanket around his shoulders, reading the same page for 10 minutes without turning it. I noticed his fingers tightening around the book. I waited. Pushing him to speak would have been another kind of control. Finally, he closed the book and looked at me, not fully afraid, but not free of fear either. Why are you suddenly kind to me? The question landed with the weight of everything I had been unable to say. Outside, thunder rolled far beyond the estate, low and distant, not threatening, just present. I set my laptop aside and turned toward him slowly, keeping my hands folded where he could see them. There were so many answers I could have given. Because I woke up in a life I did not choose. Because the man who hurt you is gone in a way you could never prove. Because I remember another world, another city, another body, and none of that matters when you are the one left with the bruises no one can see. But impossible truths can sound like excuses when they come from the mouth of the person who caused the pain. So I chose the truth Noah could hold. I told him that I woke up and finally saw what I had done wrong. I saw the calls I ignored, the rooms I locked with rules instead of keys, the meals you ate alone, the way this house taught you to apologize for needing basic care. I cannot ask you to forget any of it. I cannot ask you to believe I am different just because I say I am. Noah's eyes shone, but he did not look away. His voice was smaller when he asked if I was being kind because Dr. Hayes blamed me. I shook my head. Guilt started it, I said, because guilt was the first honest thing I felt when I opened that door. But guilt is not enough to build a life on. You deserve safety when no one is watching. You deserve choices even when I disagree. You deserve a husband who asks before entering, listens before deciding, and stays when care becomes inconvenient. He held the blanket tighter around his shoulders. For a long moment, the only sound was the rain. Then he asked the question that hurt more than the first. What happens when you get tired of being patient? I had no right to be wounded by it. The old Ryan had taught him that patience was temporary and kindness was a mood. I leaned back, giving him more space instead of less, and told him there would be days I failed, but I would not make my failure his punishment. If I became frustrated, I would step away. If I made a mistake, I would name it. If he said no, I would stop. If he needed Dr. Hayes, a friend, a separate room, or a life that did not include me in the same way, I would help him have it. His lips parted slightly, as if that answer had not existed in any version of the future he had imagined. I took off the wedding ring from my finger and placed it on the small table between us. Noah's face went pale, and I immediately said it was not rejection. It was a promise. This ring used to mean an agreement you were trapped in. I want it to mean a choice. I will wear it again only when you want me to, and not one day before. Noah stared at the ring for a long time. Then he reached out, not to take it, but to turn it gently so the gold caught the lamplight. His hand trembled, but he did not pull it back. That night, he did not forgive me. He did not say he trusted me. But before he went upstairs, he paused at the doorway and said good night, Ryan, without apology in his voice. 3 months later, the mansion no longer sounded like a place holding its breath. Mornings began with light in the sunroom, the smell of toast, basil, and rosemary drifting in from the greenhouse path, and Noah sitting across from me with his own coffee mug instead of a tray delivered to a lonely bedroom. Recovery had not turned into a miracle overnight. There were still days when a sudden phone call from the Carter family made his shoulders tense. Days when he asked twice before entering the library. Days when I saw him pause beside a closed door as if waiting for permission the house no longer required. But now he noticed the pause too, and sometimes he opened the door himself just because he could. That was how healing looked in real life, I learned. Not fireworks, not one grand speech, just a hand reaching for a doorknob without trembling. Dr. Hayes had reduced his visits to once a month, though he still answered my careful questions with the patience of a saint. Noah had gained color in his face and steadiness in his voice. He grew herbs in 3 raised garden beds near the south wall, labeled each pot in neat handwriting, and laughed softly the day I confused mint with basil in a soup recipe so badly that even Mrs. Vale looked personally offended. The staff changed too. Some left. Better ones came. The house stopped calling Noah an inconvenience and started asking what he wanted for dinner. The east room stayed open, but Noah no longer lived inside it. He used the library in the afternoons, the greenhouse before lunch, and the sunroom whenever rain made the world feel smaller and safer. My wedding ring remained on the small table for 78 days. I never touched it unless I dusted around it. I did not ask. I did not hint. The choice had to be his or it meant nothing. On the 79th day, we attended the Carter Foundation winter dinner, not because Evelyn invited us kindly, but because Noah said he was tired of being the person everyone discussed in rooms he was not allowed to enter. I told him we could leave after 5 minutes or never go at all. He adjusted his navy suit in the mirror, looked pale but steady, and said he wanted to go as himself. At the ballroom, Evelyn greeted us with a smile polished thin enough to cut glass. She began to introduce Noah as my Omega, but Noah stepped forward before I could speak. His voice was quiet, clear, and strong enough to carry. "Noah Carter Bennett," he said, "Ryan's husband." The room paused. I felt something in my chest loosen, not because he used my name, but because he used his own without shrinking. Evelyn's expression tightened. I offered Noah my arm, palm open, no pressure. He looked at it, then at me, and placed his hand there by choice. After the dinner, when we returned home under a clean, cold sky, Noah stopped in the sunroom where the ring still waited on the table. He picked it up and turned it once between his fingers. I stood several feet away, hardly breathing. He said he did not know whether forgiveness was one moment or many small ones, but he knew he no longer felt alone in the house. Then he walked to me and placed the ring in my palm. "You can wear it again, Ryan," he said, "but this time we write the marriage ourselves." My hand shook as I slid it back on. There was no cheering, no perfect ending, no erased past. There was only Noah, standing in warm lamplight with rosemary on his sleeves, choosing the next page with open eyes. And for the first time since I woke inside Ryan Carter's life, I felt that maybe redemption was not being forgiven for the damage. It was becoming someone safe enough to help build what came after. True redemption isn't just about saying sorry. It's about becoming a safe place for the one you love. If Ryan and Noah's beautiful story of healing and second chances warmed your heart, please leave a like and share your favorite moment in the comments. Subscribe for more emotional romance stories every week.